smart aesthetics, branding, marketing, entrepreneurship.
Greetings and welcome back to the Kiss My Aesthetic podcast. The day that I'm recording this is actually the opening ceremonies for the Olympics, and I could not be more excited. I love Olympic season. I love everything that happens around sports stories, around success, around athleticism, and especially paying attention to how the brands are getting involved because my sister and I are headed to Paris to go watch the Olympics for ourselves. And I wanted to get this episode out before we left just to kind of make some brand predictions, give you some context, and have all of you savvy marketers, the KMA fam, be paying attention to where brands are aligning themselves with the Olympic Games and how you might be able to implement a lot of the same strategies when it comes to your brand or your presence on social media. So I have a lot of thoughts, and I'm just going to disclaimer this whole episode. I have no idea how long this is going to go, but I've been trying to record this for like the better part of a month because I have so many different things that are all kind of coming into my brain at the same time. So I'm going to do the best that I can to organize it. I've got my good buddy ChatGPT here off to the side with some of the research and the dates and the key facts and figures. But this is really meant to be kind of a think tank on where I am predicting a lot of this is going to go, as well as just a time capsule for where I think that the industry in general is headed. So the industry I'm talking about, of course, is marketing, social media, influencer relationships, and how athletes and influencers are a lot more similar than I think a lot of people give them credit. So without further ado, we're going to get into the episode. Like I said, stick with me. It's going to be a roller coaster, right? First and foremost, want to talk about brand alignments and Olympics. So we know Olympic Games, of course, ancient Greek games that become modernized. It's a way of brands to, and also as nationals of each country, to feel really invested in what's going on. And I think to even just preface this entire conversation, we have to talk about the psychological reasons that we love the Olympics, right? So Olympics captivate global audiences for numerous psychological reasons, reflecting deep-seated human instincts and cultural phenomena, right? There's nothing that makes me feel more patriotic than watching someone do a floor routine on behalf of Team USA, because it's this combination of national pride in a way that's not violent. Is that weird to say? I think the Olympics is like this perfect showcase of all of these countries coming together and competing for something in a way that people can walk away and feel good about how your country showed up, versus the only other thing where a bunch of other countries are showing up and competing for something is like a war. So maybe it's Hunger Games or it's dystopian to think of those things together. But I think that the national pride and the sense of patriotism that we feel watching athletes represent us and represent our country on a world stage gives us this strong sense of like national pride and national unity. Nothing brings people together quite like the Olympics. And this also creates an identity for the viewers to cheer on our home country. We don't have this as much in the US as you even do in Europe with football, South America, like literally every other country that plays soccer except for us, to that scale. But I think Olympics really provides that opportunity. Also, seeing universal values and inspirational stories impacts how we feel not only about our country, but about ourselves, right? We love seeing athletes because we love seeing excellence and perseverance. And the Olympics really gives us that showcase of human physical achievement, hard work, perseverance, and excellence. And who doesn't want to see somebody at the top of their game, right? Also, overcoming adversity. Many athletes have really compelling stories about how they started in underfunded schools or disadvantaged, or kind of this rags to riches story, or really being able to overcome so many hurdles, so many obstacles to get themselves there, setbacks, injuries, training, opportunity. The Olympics really gives us a chance to highlight those deeply human stories that, although they're doing it to an extraordinary degree, does have us excited, makes you feel motivated to go to your day-to-day, knowing that there's this symbol of overcoming hardship on your screen, right? Cultural exchange and global unity is another reason that we feel so psychologically tied to the Olympics. It gives us a chance to see athletes from all over the world and promote cultural exchange and understanding. So even if they don't speak the same language, can they still play each other in badminton? Can they do fencing? Can they swim against each other in the pool? And that's one of the beautiful things about Olympics, in my opinion. Global celebration as well. The Olympics, especially the opening ceremonies, give such a beautiful opportunity for each country to send these delegates of their nation to wear traditional clothing or do dance or food or culture, language. There's so much opportunity to blend all of those cultures together and really also celebrate what makes them so different, right? There's a lot of ritual and tradition embedded in the Olympics, the symbolism, the opening and closing ceremonies. It feels like it's a part of human history. It feels super unique. It's only happening every 2 years, and for Summer Olympics every 4 years. So that novelty aspect is really exciting, right? It's something to look forward to. It doesn't happen all the time. And it's the blend of traditional elements and the excitement of new performances that keep the viewers engaged. World records get broken every single time at the Olympics. The technology gets better. Our understanding of the human body is better. Their health is better. We've got so much more opportunity within athletics with the Olympics to track because they have this big time gap between Olympics, that it keeps us really on the edge of our seat. Obviously, narrative and drama, full of dramatic events, unexpected victories, heartbreaking defeats, and compelling human interest stories are driving a lot of our alignment to the Olympics. And then naturally, we create the hero and villain dynamics, right? So athletes become the heroes or villains in the eyes of the public, adding to drama and excitement. You want the good guys to win and the bad guys to lose, right? And that's kind of seen throughout all of sports, but particularly in the Olympics. There's also some really psychological benefits of watching sport. Sport evokes a lot of strong emotions, right? Provides an outlet for joy, excitement, or even stress relief, and it creates social connection. I think what I love most about the Olympics is the opportunity to talk about something that everyone's talking about and feel a part of the conversation. It brings people together, whether you're attending in person or you're watching in groups or you're just discussing it on social media or in person at the office, commuting, on a walk, whatever. The Olympics gives us something to sink our teeth into, and especially in an election year, feels like neutral territory to be talking about it. There's a lot of aspirational influence within the Olympics. Athletes often become role models. They inspire others to pursue their goals and adopt healthier lifestyles. And it's aspirational. Seeing athletes achieve greatness can motivate us to reach our highest potential and excellence within our own lives. There's a lot of different studies and sources as well, which I can include in the show notes, relating to national identity in sports, cultural exchange in sports, psychological benefits of watching sport. But now that we've kind of laid the groundwork, and it really should come as a surprise to no one why we love the Olympics, is really to think about the history of brand partnerships with the Olympics. So all of those major psychological appeals that I laid out in the first part of this episode are really the reason why brands hop in on the opportunity to market their product or service alongside the Olympics, right? So the first brand to really do this, actually, it was 1928 Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola's partnership with the Olympics began during the Amsterdam Games, marking the start of their sponsorship with the Olympics. And it aligned with the brand values and the reach of the Olympics of telling the story of Coca-Cola. Ironically, like Coca-Cola plus athletes doesn't seem like the most natural partnership. And even more to that effect, the next major brand partnership with the Olympics was McDonald's in 1978. So this was their first official sponsorship. McDonald's became an official sponsor during the 1976 Montreal Games, providing food for the athletes and establishing long-term relationships with the Olympic movement. Again, interesting choice, but major brands, major American institutions, Coca-Cola, McDonald's. As the years go on, the next big notable brand partnership in Olympic history is Visa. So 1986, Visa became the official payment system for the Olympics, which is huge, a role that is maintained through various games. And the partnership really highlighted Visa's global reach and reliability, enhancing brand image. So we talked about global reach, we talked about influence, we talked about the psychological appeal of sport. And when you start to put the brands in the environment where all of these stories are taking place, it creates that strong attachment to a product or service that otherwise maybe wouldn't have so much of a story. So Visa, for example, right? Like, okay, payment processing. It doesn't have the come up story of someone who was doing cartwheels on their parents' floor at age 5 and going all the way to the Olympics, right? But all of a sudden, you see an ad using one of those athletes' stories as the endorsement for something like a Visa credit card. And all of a sudden, you start to attach those two things to each other, right? You start to see the Visa logo on the background, on the corner of your screen, in the adverts for the Olympics, and you start to conflate the two things. And that's what those brands are really banking on, is that you're going to start to associate them with the same attributes and qualities of not only the Olympic Games, but the Olympic athletes as well. well. In 1992, Samsung hopped on the train and joined the TOP program, which provided wireless communication during the 1998 Nagano Winter Games, which is notable. Over the years, Samsung has expanded its involvement, now playing a major role in the innovative technology that's being used for the games. So you'll see Samsung, again, really strategic partnerships, strategic brand placement. And I think that aligning themselves with the tech side of the Olympics is obviously a good brand fit, but it starts to get your brain to go there, right? The next time you see Samsung, you're remembering like, oh yeah, I remember seeing that either consciously or subconsciously. I remember seeing that they were doing all of the start and stop or all of the cameras, or you're going to start to notice where those brands have embedded themselves and which part of the games they feel that their brand is going to get the most alignment and the most ROI. Another major brand partnership is 2012 London Olympics, Procter & Gamble, and notably their Thank You Mom campaign. So they launched a highly successful Thank You Mom campaign, which was actually celebrating not the role of the athletes, but the role of the athletes' mothers in the Olympics. So I think, again, another opportunity to really kind of pull at the heartstrings where otherwise you wouldn't. I think Procter & Gamble, although they make a lot of consumer brands, they don't have necessarily that deeply emotional appeal, but going for the moms instead of the athletes was such a smart move because Procter & Gamble are products that are purchased by moms for kids. And then these kids become athletes. These kids go on to do great, amazing things. So really interesting emotional appeal with that campaign. It resonated globally. It enhanced Procter & Gamble's brand image and demonstrated, obviously, the power of storytelling with branding. More notable partnerships would be, for example, Rio Olympics and Visa again. So Visa coming through with the wearable payment technology, introducing payment rings and bracelets for athletes in attendance. So really showcasing modern edge, cutting edge things here. This is 2016. 2020, Tokyo Olympics focused a lot on sustainability. So they partnered with brands like Toyota, Panasonic, which emphasized in sustainability, and Toyota provided a fleet of eco-friendly vehicles. So again, it's not even so much about putting your logo on the athlete or in the background of the stands, but what are all those different brand touch points that the brands can align themselves with associated with the games that would put that positive connotation in the mind of the consumer to magnetize the two things together. So in this instance, for example, Toyota and the eco-friendly vehicles. It's 2020. They're coming up with a bunch of EVs. Being able to sponsor just the rides back and forth to the Olympic Village, it makes so much sense for Toyota, right? Last but not least, this year, Paris 2024 Olympics, and this is really what I wanted to talk about, LVMH. So LVMH is the holding company, the luxury brand that has brands like Moet Hennessy, Sephora, etc., Louis Vuitton, all of these Dior major brands. And they're going to play a significant role in the celebratory moments and the public activations surrounding this year's Olympics. Being in Paris, which is the world-renowned city for fashion and city of love, of course, the fact that they went luxury with the bend on this sponsorship makes a lot of sense. And I'm going to tell you why. First and foremost, the fashion aspect. I believe, and this is one of my first predictions of the episode, I believe that we're going to start seeing a major shift away from influencers towards athletes when it comes to fashion. We've already seen this with the WNBA, the WHL, the Women's Hockey League, and people coming off of Wimbledon, etc., that there is a real opportunity for brands, especially high fashion houses, to dress athletes. I think the reason that it hasn't happened before is obviously years past, these brands were dressing models, right? We were dressing models because the models sell the look of the clothes, arguably the best, right? That's literally their job, is to sell how the clothes look and to sell the sex appeal and to sell the luxury and the fantasy of wearing Dior or Louis Vuitton or Chanel or any of these brands, right? That shifted with social media because we got influencers. So influencers, as we know it, the term influencer, like as a job description, really is happening in the mid 2000s, really starting with bloggers, right? So the bloggers, They got their trusty DSLR camera. We've got Instagram. We're posting our outfits. We're growing. We're building. And it took a long time for these major brands to jump on the idea of the fad of dressing an influencer over a model or a celebrity. Celebrity as well has that like staying power. It has that brand. They're building a brand for themselves at the same time that they're wearing the brand. So there's this kind of double-edged meaning, right? So like, for example, like Theo James just did an entire cologne ad. You're going to see Theo James in your show on your TV, and then you're going to flip through a magazine and see him in the ad, and then you're going to go to the airport and his big old face is going to be printed everywhere. The opportunity, however, with working with athletes is I think that the athletes have more staying power in the culture than models, which we don't know their names, and actors and singers and kind of like Hollywood types, because also the athletes actually give a story for a more approachable alignment because you're learning their story. Of course, they're doing incredible, extraordinary things in their sport. Like that, they are the top of their craft. In a lot of ways, that's not relatable. Right. But I think at the end of the day, there's so much more diversity that we see within athletics than when we see with modeling or that we see even with kind of more of your typical like Hollywood celebrity. So we're seeing people from all different backgrounds, from all different ethnicities, from all different shapes and sizes. Like there's an inherent inclusivity in the Olympics and inclusivity in athletics that you don't see in some of those other spaces. So my prediction is that a lot of these major fashion houses are going to start to dress athletes as if they were the influencers or celebrities that they deserve to be. So I wouldn't be surprised to see these Paris Olympics turn into kind of a bit of a fashion week moment with the athletes really carrying a lot of these looks. I think that it's going to be something that's totally going to be talked about on social media. And I think that the brands that are doing Olympic themed collections are already ahead of the game, which kind of brings me to my next point, which is how you can incorporate your brand into some of this Olympics fodder, right? So thinking about what you could do on a small scale, because it's going to be pretty much impossible to get access to these athletes, right? So thinking about how you might be able to pull your audience in on the Olympics conversation within your own social media, within your own marketing, your own brand partnerships, etc. One of the things I'm really looking forward to being in Paris next week is paying attention to all the brand activations. So LVMH has also come out saying that they're playing a huge role in not only they've designed all of the medals to be owned by the athletes, right? The champions, but they are going to be hosting a lot of brand activations throughout the city. And that's the thing I am so excited for, because I basically just want to jump around and go to all the brand activations and see how they're engaging the public in that brand with the theme of sports and the theme of Olympics, right? So keeping in mind, being part of the conversation on social media or incorporating some kind of activation that is Olympic themed for your brand as suggestions that you can take away from this episode. The first idea is to actually consider yourself the sponsor of a local athlete or show your support for someone from your hometown. I live in Cardiff. One of the skateboarders that's going to be competing in the Olympics is from Cardiff. So I'm going to go out of my way to really shout that out, right? And be part of that conversation and support the hometown hero. But you can do this on a smaller scale. Find your local pickleball league or t-ball team or basketball group or hockey team and figure out if there's athletes that you can sponsor or organizations that you can sponsor as your brand, right? So aligning yourself with those opportunities, I think is great for brand building and also gives you an opportunity to show up for the values that you appreciate, right? So even if you are a dentist or an architect or you have a product and you want to get more plugged in to athletics, finding ways to sponsor sports teams, especially on the smaller level, is such a cool way to do that. And especially if any of those kids end up in the Olympics, right? Like imagine the story for your brand when you invest in the local tennis team down the street, right? And your real estate office is sponsoring the kids' youth tennis in your city. And then one of those kids goes all the way to the Olympics and they can shout you out as the brand that believed in them and helped fund them and helped get them extra lessons or replace their courts or get them new tennis balls. There's like that really natural story there. Granted, it's a long shot, but I think that those opportunities and showing support in your community locally by sponsoring athletes and sponsoring athletics is a really really smart move. The next thing you could do with your brand when it comes to creating any kind of Olympics themed content is an Olympic themed campaign. So you may offer limited edition products or services. You may host community events or viewing parties. I think that the playbook is so obvious here. I mean, especially for American-based brands, anything like red, white, and blue, the Olympic rings, etc. It reminds us of the subscription box that we did earlier this year for Dental Hygiene Nation. We did an Olympics themed box, and we actually deviated a little bit from the traditional Olympics aesthetic, and we went for instead a focus on metallics. So the entire box and all of the items within it were gold, silver, and bronze. So it was the Olympic theme without having to do things that felt too kitschy or too stripy or too varsity. And we came up with some really cool pieces. So if you haven't seen that yet, that's on our website. Head on over to mkwcreative.co/ should be under events and merch, and the Olympics theme box within there. So if you're a jewelry company, for example, instead of posting red, white, and blue, go USA, Olympic rings, could you make a campaign about Olympic rings? Like rings, the actual jewelry, and like things that look gold, silver, bronze, mixed metals, things like that. You could totally riff off of this in another direction. You could also do competition-based things. So maybe your audience, maybe you have the morning routine Olympics, right? And if you do some kind of campaign that engages your audience to create UGC around what they think they would get a gold medal in as it relates to your product. That could be a really fun way to get people plugged in on social media. So contests, interactive content, hashtags and themes to connect with the Olympic conversation, yes. But I think finding ways to relate your values to what you see exhibited through the athletes is a really cool way to bring that forward, right? So for us, it might be song choice on rhythmic gymnastics and how it reflects their brand, or brand alignment with athletes in signature colors, something to that effect, where we're really pointing out how the branding is relating to the Olympics, instead of just, reposting when somebody wins and calling it good. Collaborations and partnerships would be another way to really exhibit the Olympic spirit as you're heading into this next month or so of sports. So partnering with local businesses or doing joint promotions and collaborations with brands is a fun way to hop in on the amount of visibility that will be online in the next month. So thinking about how many people are actually going to be online watching the games. Almost nobody that I know has cable anymore. So we're all going to be watching it on streaming anyway, if not from our clips from TikTok and Reels. So capitalizing on the amount of viewership that is going to be online during this time, I think hosting a giveaway or doing some kind of collaborative piece of content during the Olympics is a great idea, especially if it's hinging on someone from your country winning something. So for example, a lot of the local bars and restaurants in San Diego would do promotion if the Padres would score a certain number of runs, right? You could do something similar where you could kind of almost host a virtual watch party with your audience, and then whatever the results of those things equals the percentage discount on your website, for example. So staying mobile and staying agile during these cultural happenings, I think would be a fun way to just spice up your social content, spice up your marketing efforts. Again, relate it to the brand, relate to the stories. I think a lot of what we're going to be doing with our social media clients in the next few weeks is figuring out how to tell those really poignant, really heartstrings kind of origin stories and about what we're looking forward to, how the games represent those values, right? Product-based businesses, I think, have it a bit easier. Service-based businesses may be a little more difficult, but you could think about how Savvy Interiors or Falk Roof & Gallagher or even Dental Hygiene Nation could showcase how their brand values, they see that hope or the joy or the anticipation or the letdown that happens with athletics and relating that back to your core consumer and why they would want to use your product or service. Those are most of my thoughts. Again, thinking about how the history of the Olympics and the history of brand partnerships is playing into this, looking forward to brand activations and how they pull their audience into the Olympics beyond just watching the actual events, but what are those pop-ups and shopping experiences and photo ops and everything that's going to be all around the city. And believe me, I'll take 1,005 pictures and share them all with you on my stories. And then lastly, considering how your brand might want to create your own type of content around this type of cultural phenomenon. I think that being aware of when these things happen and not shying away from them, but leaning in is a really cool way to make things things that people want to engage with and create conversation and be part of the social discourse. Whereas a lot of brands, I think, get a little shy to do that. Now's your opportunity, and you have full permission to create something cool, Olympics theme, something based on the idea, at the very minimum, a watch party and a celebration of the athletes that you loved to see. And in the end, we'll wish everyone a happy Olympic Games. I'm really stoked. Make sure you're following over on mkwcreative.co on TikTok and Instagram, because I will be showcasing everything that I see, of course. And we'll be happy to do a part 2 to this episode, recapping some of our highlights from the trip. So cheers, everybody. Have a good time. Hope you enjoyed this episode. If you're going to be at the Olympics, send me a DM because I would love to meet you. And we'll see you after. Bye.